G'day everyone, and welcome to the fourth episode of the Risky Rollers podcast. I'm Dalton, I'm here with Lockie.
Hello everybody.
And we're joined with Lawrence.
Hi everyone.
Lawrence is a mate of ours, again from our local club, and I think Lockie and I are both in consensus probably one of the more competitive players in the group.
Look, let's all be honest. Lawrence is the filthy meta chaser of the club.
I'm not really sure, bro.
I'm sorry. How many points of AdMech have you just taken?
Yeah. And then before that, it was how much Harleys did you buy?
No more Harleys. No more Harleys.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong.
But,
I think it's good. I don't think it's a bad thing. I love it.
And in all seriousness, I generally think Lawrence is, if not the best, then one of the best actual players in the group as well.
Hands down. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for that, boys.
So today we're going to be discussing a couple of Lawrence's armies, which are two ends of the power spectrum.
Yes.
Which are, of course, the AdMech, as we mentioned, which are pretty indisputably the most powerful army in the game. And then competing with bottom spot with probably Genestealer cults are the Knights.
The Imperial
Knights. Which is your first army, I believe.
Yeah, that's very true.
So we'll be getting into that a bit, and sort of the difference between the two. And we're also going to talk then a bit more about competitive play as a whole. What draws people to play it, and then how does that interact with playing in like a local friendly club or what we tend to call a casual meta. So before we get into all of that, I'll mention Dice Arcade. There's a discount code Risky Rollers to grab an extra discount on top of their prices. So check them out. Check out our Discord, our Patreon. You know the drill by now. On Insta, you can see all of the upcoming things we're working on, including, by the time this is out, probably a few posts on Infinity stuff as well.
Yeah.
We're super keen to get into.
So pumped for that.
And make sure to, on whatever platform you're listening to us on, whether that be YouTube or one of the many audio hosting platforms, drop us a review or a follow or whatever's relevant there. It does really help the algorithm and means that we can be focusing more on the podcast and bringing better content out. So, getting into the podcast today then, podcast proper. I'd like to start off by asking, what have we all been working on hobby-wise?
Lucky?
Lawrence?
Lawrence, okay, as you said, I'm chasing the meta. So actually, I've got 20 more Skitarii and Rustokers I'm building, and then another set of 9 Cerberus Raiders. I'm chasing a 27 model of Raiders. Currently, I only have 15. So let's see how fast I can build that one.
27 Raiders.
3 units of 9. They're the best screeners, bro.
All right, we're going to talk about that later for sure. I want to pick that apart. I have been horrendous. I'm in a bit of a hobby lag drought kind of. I don't want to use the word burnout because I don't necessarily agree with it, but I'm pretty much in a hobby burnout. Put it that way. I've just got a unit of Hormagaunts to finish, and then I was going to get into the Sisters a bit more. Hopefully you all listening would have seen, but we got a big lot of Kill Team and Grey Knight stuff arrive, so that is on the table at the moment.
We did. We got a massive shipment of stuff from Dice Arcade showing up the day of this recording, actually.
Yeah.
Which would be, all the new Kill Team stuff, the Hexfire box, as well as some other non-GW stuff, which we're both very excited about.
Yeah, more on that stuff probably in the coming weeks.
Well, I mean, by the time this is up, you will have seen it on Instagram.
Yes.
Which is
so,
some Infinity stuff, some books, rule books, and some minis.
And terrain.
Oh, absolutely, of course. How could I forget miniature scenery? Sent us a big shipment of MDF terrain, which is going to be epic.
Yeah,
that's cool.
So we'll cover that more in a later bat rep and podcast and everything. We'll talk about them and what they're doing and the really, really cool stuff with our mad plan for that. The table is going to be awesome.
Yeah. Lawrence,
Yep.
I'm sorry, 27 raiders.
Yes.
Yeah.
27
Let's get straight into this. What's
Yeah.
going on?
Yeah.
No, because I actually
And why do you hate us so much?
no. No, because you see, the Raiders is one of the very good admech utility, right? They have, like you can move them pre the first round, so you can really put pressure already on your opponent. And then, of course,
But is that
if you are not the first player, and then you can just move them back to your deployment zone. But you see, 3 of 9 units can really put pressure in the mid board if you would be the first player.
Is that an infiltrate and a scout move?
Yes, correct.
Like you. Ooh, very nice.
okay? So yes, there's an infiltrate and a scout move. So the scout move's what is a maximum 6-inch move
No, no,
pre-game, right?
No, the pre-game move for Raiders are their normal move, which is I believe 10 or 12.
12.
Or 12.
Yeah.
That's their
Okay.
movement.
Yeah. Okay. It's just their movement, and then.
Wow.
But then you say infiltrate as well, so
No.
they can
Sorry,
be.
not the infiltrate. The infiltrate, of course, are for your infiltrators, the Skitarii.
And Rostockers.
Yes.
Yeah, gotcha. So 3 units of 9, right? That's your max maxing.
Yeah, because 3. What do you call this one? The maximum of 3 of the unit, right? So that's the only thing you can have.
Yeah, because it's fast attack choice, right?
Yes, it's the fast attack choice as well.
Yeah, so you're not min maxing, you're max maxing.
Yes.
Yes. Which makes sense if you're going to be using them to target them, stratagems and buffs and things to try and actually get some damage output from them.
Yep.
So my biggest question here is there a how do I phrase it? Is there not an element of redundancy here?
Of course.
I'm genuinely asking. It's not a loaded statement. I'm actually genuinely asking. Is there a sense of redundancy there?
Of course, there should always be a redundancy. Depends on like what would be your game plan is, right? So actually, Raiders is very good in 2 Forge World, I reckon, which is the Mars, and at the same time Metallica. Mars is because of course they can also have their own canticles. Plus, at the same time, you would have the stratagem of the Rat of Mars, wherein you can have.
Okay, so quickly, just for people who may be listening and don't understand what canticles are, I just want to do a quick rundown of what canticles, what that is.
Well, that's their chapter tactic, right?
Yes. So
they have canticles, but then Skitarii units, which are like a subsection, have doctriners.
Yes, correct.
And then Mars lets them get both.
So basically, right, all other Forge World, Skitarii get doctrinas, and then those Cult Mechanicus unit gets canticle. But if your Forge World is Mars, Skitarii units can also get canticle.
So you're doubling up a buff, an army-wide buff, essentially, right?
So, yeah, correct. So you'll have multiple ways of optimizing whatever their ability would be.
Yeah, and that's the one where you pick it each turn, yeah?
Yes. So of course, depending on what
Shroud Psalm is one of them, for example, right?
Yeah. So Shroud Psalm, yes, is one of them. So see, you'll have a save of a light cover for a canticle, but you also have actually in Doctrina. What do you call this one? The Bulwark Imperative, which is also similar to Shroud Psalm. So you can really double buff whatever units that you want to, and then just strategize on which buffs do you need every round.
Right.
So you're kind of
adding to that layer effect that you can get with AdMech. You're layering buffs on buffs, and then you're layering another set of buffs.
Yes,
on top
correct.
Of all of that across your entire army.
Correct.
So when I look at this kind of, you say utility, I mean they're not obsec, right?
They're not obsec, but they're very good in screening, and then preventing charges from your opponent, because they have their very infamous stratagem, the Tactica Obliqua. It was very good before, but I believe although it's still 2 CP now, it's still a bit I think it's still respectable.
It's still very good, like being able to play around with your own movement.
Yes.
Giving yourself that freedom, and then playing with what your opponent can and can't do.
And just explain what that stratagem is quickly.
It's called Tactica Obliqua. So before, right, automatic when your opponent would declare a charge. You can move 12 inches, and then your opponent would already fail a charge because it's very impossible that they can get the charge. But at this time, for their new codex, the opponent can choose or have another target for their charge.
Yeah, so
It's
me,
2
say,
CP
running...
for free movement in your opponent's charge phase.
Yes.
What's not to love?
Yeah, and also a get-out-of-jail-free card if they're going to get smashed.
Yes, correct.
Sure, and I mean, like, that's powerful, but I think it's the
free movement.
the having, because it's another 12 inches, right? It's their movement.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so it's
Free
just
movement.
that mobility. I mean, you might end up getting closer to the enemy. You know, you're like, well, I was going to get charged out here in the open, but now I can get charged while taking this objective off you.
Yes.
Or now I can get charged while doing this, or getting engaged, or any number of things like that. And that's really powerful. Even with them being able to redirect.
GK got a similar thing with the power on interceptors, and I read it initially. I was like, this is weird, and then played it, and it's crazy. It's awesome. Being able to literally double your movement and get onto an objective that you would not have gotten on beforehand.
In your opponent's turn, before your command phase, after they've shot at you.
It's awesome.
Amazing.
It's super good. But having said that, because it's a stratagem, right, you can't do that on all 3 units.
Yeah, you can't. So, of course, you really need to place your units strategically. So, not every unit would be, be pressuring in the middle board. So, of course, you really need to strategize and then place them tactically.
So, would you use them as like a forward pressure bully unit? Is that like the kind of focus of like, hey, deal with this stuff, and then while the rest of your army kind of...
So actually, I've been watching a lot of Richard Ziegler's like admech plays. So normally he would have one unit of at least 8 or 9 to be the one who's being aggressive, and the one who would be like responding to the next level of opponent. So
that's your counter charge. Yeah. Your counter unit.
Yes, because of course, if you, let's say you would be putting them on the right flank, the left flank should either be an infiltrator, a Skitarian unit. So of course, you are really giving a lot of challenge to your opponent. But where should I respond first? Is this a very high threat or not? So
you're disrupting target priority at that point,
yes.
Right? You're confusing them of like, what is the most important thing that I need to kill as the opponent, and then you're flooding the board with too many good targets that they need to overcommit to kill.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it's almost the opposite of a distraction kind of fix, because they're cheap units. I mean, how much does a unit of 9 cost?
I believe a unit of one Cerberus Raider is at least 18 points. Give me a second. I just need to confirm. Sorry, 16 points a model. So it's very cheap, actually.
Slightly cheaper than 2 Skitarii.
It's cheaper than an intercessor.
16 points.
Well, that's the thing.
It's cheaper than Attack Marine.
It's cheaper than Attack Marine, but it's a cheap unit that... Yeah, alright, it'll die to a stiff breeze. But
they're still, 3 wounds, T4, right?
Yes, they're toughness 4 with 2 wounds, actually. They lost...
2 wounds, they lost the wound.
Correct.
But,
and I mean, they're not exactly sitting on, 2 up, 3 up saves.
But again, they're utility, right? That's not what you're using them for.
Yes.
Exactly. And that's the thing, it's like the inverse of a distraction kind of effects, where... they're not necessarily going to be putting out masses of damage either. You've got the rest of your army, all your chickens and your Skitarii to do that.
Well,
but
it's funny
up there
because
in your opponent's face, and you do have to deal with them because their movement is so useful.
Correct.
Because they're not going to do damage to your army necessarily, but they're going to score so many points against you if you leave them alone.
Yes.
And on top of that, right, you say, they're not sitting there with the 2 up, 4 up. But you run Shroud Psalm and you actually sit them in cover because of their advanced move. They are on a 2 up save.
Yes. Yeah, fair enough, yeah.
And then you can, as you said, you can
cover.
Actually get them sit them on a 1 up, right?
Yes, and then of course you can also arm them with the data tether, and then of course you can give a lot of buffs from your Skitarii Marshal.
Isn't there a way for the Marshal to tell a unit to do an action and still otherwise do normal stuff?
Yes, there is a...
That's a Warlord trait, right?
There's a Warlord trait for that.
Yeah.
You still can do action even though if you're shooting.
So your Skitarii Marshal can be sitting there going, you rod in that quarter, you rod in that quarter.
Yes. That's why actually.
while they're still
Well, you can't run
being
twice
active.
in the same
No, no,
turn,
as in you in. Oh, tell you what, you could potentially have in 3 turns 1 unit rod in every quarter, right? Because
Yeah.
you do that here, zip off to the opponent's side in their in their charge phase, right? The next turn you're there already. You can move to a better position, whatever you like, rod there. And again, anytime your opponent's devoting to shooting that, they're not shooting your threats.
Yep.
And then maybe you're using Shroud Sound, maybe you're using whatever that is to make them really tough anyway. So they have to sink far more firepower than they should into them.
Yep.
Well, I think that's the crutch point,
and
right?
then
Like that's
and then you're moving them across to the next objective. So your opponents, do I deal with this 9-man unit of
Raiders.
of nothing.
speedy boys over here of nothing that for whatever reason I just can't kill with chaff fire? Or do I devote my attention to the chickens that are tearing my army apart but not necessarily scoring points?
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, it's.
Like,
I mean,
like,
it's crazy.
Yeah, they're a very good
It's just-
distraction unit.
So obviously with you running 9, and I mean, you're running no Taraxi, right?
No.
With this, so actually, just quickly, what's the rest of this list?
Okay, so the list I would be trialing this out would actually be a Metallica list. So because I've also observed, right, if most of the terrains that we are playing are very heavy, like it's either heavy terrain or a lot of dense or a lot.
I mean, we pretty much play a lot of
Yes,
heavy terrain
so-
tables in our club anyway.
Yeah.
Because,
So that's why.
And Ninth really benefits from it.
Yeah.
exactly, that's why we do
So
it.
Metallica, right? So they have no penalty for those units that have assault weapons and advance, and then also no penalty for those units that moved. So, and then
With heavy, right?
Yes,
So you can
you can move them and then
and shoot
still
with heavy.
shoot.
And so on, yeah.
And then of course, I believe in Metallica, in the Book of Frost, they have a special stratagem that can auto advance into 6. So you see, if you put the Rust Stalkers or even whatever unit that you want, your threat range would be at least already 20. Because let's say Rust Stalkers movement is 8, and then you can have what do you call this one? Your Doctrina of +3 movement, that's 11. Then auto charge of 6. Auto advance of 6. That's already 17 movement just in your movement, and then of course your charge. You can put additional buffs to make your charge rerolls. So
Are you talking about the March to War strat?
I think so. That's the
Use this stratagem in your movement phase when a Metallica unit from
Yes.
your army advances. Do not make an advance roll instead until the end of the phase. Add 6
Add 6
inches to the
inches.
move
So
characteristic.
the list.
That is it's 1 CP for that. That
Well,
is-
also, the way it's worded, is it an advance or is it just a
no,
modification?
it's a move. It's a modification to move, which doesn't matter anyway
because-
because
That's
they
a charge
receive
afterwards.
penalties for advancing anyway. So I don't
Yeah,
understand
but
why that's worded that way.
It lets you charge afterwards.
So the list actually, as
Oh, yeah, of
as
course.
you were asking, so it's actually a trade-off from Ataraxi to another 9 of these raiders. So that would be 3x9 raiders, and then should be around 3x8 Skitarian Rastalkers, and then probably 3x7 of infiltrators, and then just 6x5 units of your Skitarii, either a Vanguard or Rangers, and then you will have 2 Marshal and 1 Manipulus, and then you would have 1 Techno Archaeologist. So he would have the Metallican Lang. Is that a warlord trait or a relic?
So is this 2 patrols?
No,
patrols, right?
No, it's just 1 battalion.
Oh, what Rust Stalkers?
It's an elite. Is it an elite? I believe so. They are elites.
Rust Stalkers are elites.
Yes, they are elites.
Yeah, and then infiltrators are elites too,
Yeah,
right?
so you would also occupy all your 6 slots of elite, and then
Five slots.
Five,
slots.
yeah, if I was
Oh,
gonna
sorry.
say,
and
yeah.
then that would be just probably your infiltrators would just be an 8 and a 7, and then this one won't have any Iron Strider Ballistary, so mostly are just those infantry units. And then
Right, so you're saturating the board with little cheap chaff units that have no right to be as tough as they are.
yes, correct.
or as cheap as they are.
Or as
So
cheap.
so you're kind of hoarding.
Yes, it's actually
Yeah, it's a horde list,
just
right?
like-
I mean, quote unquote horde.
so. I think the strategy would be like, as I've said, you would forward deploy already maybe 1 unit of your raiders, put some pressure on maybe whatever flank you want, right? And then on the left, you would put either an infiltrator, and then you will just respond to whatever your opponent would throw at you. So, of course, normal layout of the battle map, right? You would already have at least two objective on your side and then two on your opponent and then probably one or two on the middle. So you would always just protecting the middle objective and then of course putting a lot of pressure on the right or left flank and then just always responding on the threat that the opponent give you. So the strategy would always just be KG, be KG, be KG, be very defensive and then just respond while harassing your opponent.
It's a very cagey and it's a very responsive list. I'm thinking about it. I like it. I like it a lot.
I like it a lot too. Actually, it's got like
It's
just
very
quick,
responsive.
just quickly. Can you run this because it's all Skitarii?
Yeah,
Can you run it and as a Army of Renown from Book of Fire?
yeah, that's one also good thing that I would tell you. So since they're all Skitari, then you can jump to a veteran cohort Skitari.
A veteran cohort.
So
Oh my
you
God.
have you have access to a lot of stratagem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's actually ridiculous, but of course, uh,
So just quickly on that though, can you actually use if you run Metallica? Can you use the stuff from both books?
yes, if you are running a renowned Metallica, then you actually
And by
in,
by both books I mean both Book of Rust. Warzone
Warzone,
Caradon
yes.
books.
So you see, if
Yeah.
you would be running this list, then you need to have three books: your main codex, and then both of your Book of Frost and Book of Fire.
Well done, GW. You've got more money out of us.
Yeah.
I actually,
But no, that's a really nice list, and I mean,
I like
Because
it. I want to play it. I want to play it and get spanked by it because
I want to play. I want to play with it, and I want to play against it because it does
I wanna-
sound.
and all around it, right? You just want to be in it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you were able to watch the finals, the Orlando Open between Richard Sigler and John Lennon.
And John Lennon, yeah, the
It's
sisters
sister
list.
versus the Metallica list. So this is the list actually that Richard has, but for that particular list, he only have I believe around 17 raiders, and he's planning to make it actually 3 by 9. So he would be removing the
Right.
Taraxis because there's some like questionable what do you call this one, right? Because Taraxi, right, they already removed the stratagem wherein when you put them on the board and then pay 1 CP and then put them off the board again.
Which is totally understandable.
Yeah, which is-
having
Yeah.
a unit that is uninteractable is just dumb.
Yeah, which is very correct. But what's happening in that particular tournament, Richard is using the Dune Rider, the transport, and then
Yeah.
he would be putting the Taraxi there, and then he would be coming off from the vehicle, and then do whatever things that he
Yes.
wanted, and then he would pay 1 CP to get them off the board. So I believe,
Yeah.
right, there are some talks that it is illegal, but in that particular tournament,
That's-
it was permitted.
That's-
Yeah, that sounds like that's
Well,
pre FAQ, right?
The inverse of that is legal. You can bring them on from reserve and have them immediately get into something.
Yes.
Can you
Yes.
come from reserve and then embark?
Yep.
Yes.
Because it all happens at the end, so you choose the order it happens.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
So
I don't think I've ever
think-
embarked into a transport before, so
yeah, true. But I think in this case that may be if that's how you're trying to play them, you're trying to game it as much as possible. That might be the play is you alternate doing those two things. Because then either you can't shoot them or you have to shoot through the transport first.
yeah.
So, but there's a lot of talk that it is
Yeah.
not, it shouldn't be permitted. So,
It feels strange, given that they've just fixed the whole coming on from reserve then leaving in the same turn.
yeah,
And this is functionally very similar.
correct.
But
Yeah.
I think it's marginally more acceptable, and it's because they are still on the board,
Yeah, that is true.
albeit in a transport. You can still get to them. They're not invulnerable.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, rules as written, yes.
So,
As in, like,
Yeah,
as in it's legal. Rules as written, as intended, no, because it's a retarded rule.
correct.
well,
I think
no.
that's what I think that's what the
I'm-
consensus is, right? Like that's what Lawrence is saying is like the everyone's
Potentially,
cracking
yeah.
a fuss
It's-
because they're like, yes, you can, but
Yeah.
no, you shouldn't be able to, kind of thing, right?
I think out of all the things that are potentially an issue with the AdMech book, I'm not convinced this is.
Yeah, of course. That's the least of the problems, I would say.
Yes.
But even all right, imagine the rest of the book was perfectly balanced. If that were the case, I'm not sure I'd have umbrage with this being a thing.
You know what? On top of that, if the if the expansion books, if the Caradon books didn't exist, I would totally 100% agree with you. And you know what? It would be cool. It'd be a weird toolbox janky list. It would still probably beat most lists based on how good the core book, as in the AdMech base book is.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I would be fine with it. And you go,
Yeah.
this is cool. I want to play this. I want to find how I can out-trick this. This is really
Yes.
interesting. The moment you put the veteran cohort, plus the extra stratagems, plus the extra movement stuff you get from Act 1, you're like, F off.
Correct.
Because it's fucking bullshit.
But that's the reality. All those additional abilities that we are gaining from those additional expansion books are, of course, for those who
Busted.
those who play those army are good, but those who don't, then you wait for
Yeah.
your turn.
Right. And I mean that's that whole layering of buffs and things that just make a simple unit into something quite oppressive is.
Correct.
And to be fair, I don't think the FAQ itself was wide enough, but the specific changes in the recent AdMech FAQ, removing core from the chickens, and just the small tweaks
Yep.
to just de-layer some of that,
Yeah.
I think was a good soft touch approach. I know that they could have done that to more of the codex. And
I
think
mean,
they should
yeah,
have,
remember-
but the changes they did make, I think, were the right way to approach that sort of change. And
The
because it
weird
was-
thing is
Yeah.
with that, and I agree 100%. The weird thing is that, as you know, Lawrence has got no chickens in this list.
Yeah, no chickens.
Yeah.
Because of the
And you were seeing leading up to this point anyway, maybe in the last like 3 weeks, and at least when did the FAQ drop? It was like
a month ago.
4 months ago, 4 weeks ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was like the week before. Ish. There was a couple of tournaments where you were seeing AdMech lists with no chickens or one. You know, it was like one just for
Right.
whatever reason.
But I mean,
You're-
that's the way the meta goes. People look at a book and go, "This is the most broken unit," and you see them everywhere. And
Of
suddenly
course,
people
and then
start
everyone just
seeing-
works around it.
Yeah.
People work around it, and people
Like-
start seeing the deeper levels of the book, because it does take a few times of playing them at a good level before you start really getting into the nuance of some of the combinations and some of the synergies and some of the efficiency you can coax out of a good list.
So you know, one thing I think this list could potentially run into a big kind of wall is T-Suns.
What do you call this one?
Their
Yeah.
their psychic output on your forward units, it's like
And their added resilience against all of that one damage fire as well.
it's exactly, it's like, cool, no worries, like I can stay in the open and have a potentially 1-up save against, sorry, a 2-up save, and if I'm in cover I've got a 1-up save to all your 1 damage fire.
But Thousand
Have-
Suns also
that's-
move very
that's quite
slow, yeah?
interesting.
But their psychic range threat is like, yeah, okay, it's still 24,
24?
but you're, with this list being forward moving like that, those 27, or say even only 9 of them, you know, you kind of use that, like you were saying earlier on, as like 1 is your forward push and then 1's your counter. Well, that first one you push up, that's going to be dead, that psychic phase.
I think so.
And it's like, and the thing you say is like, where normally you'd want to put, like what we were saying, the positive about the unit is that, or the structure is that you'd need to overcommit potentially, you know, small arms fire or even medium fire to kill it. They don't
In
even
this
have
case,
to touch
you're not-
that
Yeah.
at all, and you've got no defense to it, you know, which is
Yeah.
again, I'm not saying this is, I think this is good, because then it'll force you
Yeah,
to change
yeah.
that again, and this is that whole concept of the revolving meta, right? Like we were just saying just before.
In
And
that
maybe not,
matchup-
like maybe the flooding and that forward pressure is so intense that you know, it's not enough. But then
Well, that's where I'd go with that, and I'd say that from my experience playing Necrons earlier in the edition, and using those warriors to do that flooding and to be that board control of being everywhere, even in games against your Tyranids, for example, where I took horrendous damage, that board control and that flooding and presence really pays out. So in this matchup of a T-Suns against Lawrence list here, I'd still give the edge to the AdMech. I don't.
I mean,
think
I would.
Struggle,
Yeah, I
they'd
would.
struggle to
Yeah.
hurt the Thousand Suns as efficiently as anything else. But
they'd
and
win
they'll
on
take
a
lot of
points
damage.
mobility game.
But I think their mobility just pips them to the post there. Which, that said, I don't think it's a bad thing, and I think that plays into the way Lawrence has built the list to work.
Yeah.
And
Of course, yeah.
And I think that a really quite good T-Suns player could potentially flip that on its head.
Yeah. I mean, also, I do think that this army could fall down to a very savvy combat player.
Someone who
Could
can
I say
chain multiple combats
I say
together
yeah, I say could. I think maybe orcs potentially when
Yeah.
you see
proper
what they're
horde
actually
orcs, yeah.
because even then, like I've watched and read enough about it. Well, not enough, but like some about it where even like the expert orcs players are like, we don't really know. Like
Right, yeah.
half the really good models, because hobby lag, right? Like half the really good models and the build around stuff, no one can actually properly test because they don't have
Yeah,
them.
correct.
Yeah.
Like I think of this list going, yeah, cool. Well, if I could get a single strike marine squad of like a 6-man or a 5-man into each of those Taraxis, they're all dead.
Oh yeah.
Like if you get touched, you're bad touched everywhere. Or maybe you move one, big deal, but the other two are dead. And then, but it still doesn't change the fact, and this is what it comes back to, whether it be Skitarii or AdMech, that base book, all we're talking about is one unit. You've still got the whole rest of the army to deal with. We're literally this whole discussion so far has been on one unit, and we're all talking about what we can do to take out this one unit's utility, and then it's like, oh, cool, yeah, you've dealt with that.
I still have.
Now here's everything else.
Speaking of,
here's the other 60 models.
Speaking of counters, and I'm gonna try and shoehorn this in here, Lawrence.
Yep.
If you brought your knights to a table and someone laid down this list you've just detailed across from you, what are you going to do about that? Like how are you going to try and approach that?
I would be
other end of the spectrum. You've got the fewest number of models an army can have, with somewhat subpar firepower for how many points you're putting into it.
So I would be playing knights against this what do you call this one? AdMech list, yeah?
Yeah.
I would already concede. No, actually, I still believe, knights, they are very killy, right? But in terms of mission playing game, they won't succeed. Maybe I would kill a lot of models, but in the end, I would still lose the game because of the mission. So
right. Well, is there a way that you can? I mean, maybe no prisoners or something like that. You could use it to.
Yeah,
try and optimize
one good
what you
thing
can do.
of the knights also, because they are vehicles, right? And then a lot of the weapons and then the strats of this AdMech list doesn't work with vehicles. So in terms of fighting,
Right, because it's pretty much all small arms.
yes, so they are very tough. But as I've said, in terms of primary objectives, you can never win. I'm not really sure. Even if you run the 3x Magera, and then the rest would just be armigers, would beat this list. So,
I mean, how many Moiraxes with double lightning locks can you take?
always 3 on the trees, so that should be maximum of 9. But of course, you should be.
So you can't take any. Can't take any more than 9.
You cannot take any more than 9. Correct.
That's lame.
Those lightning locks are hyper effective against Skitarii.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just thinking if you could take like 15 of them.
I mean,
you would just.
If you're at the table with 9 of them and you can alpha strike them, I could see you almost wiping the troop Skitarii off the board.
Definitely.
Well, the difference is, the problem is though that they see 9 of them, they're deploying everything behind obscurity.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
But then also, and this is the kind of whole discussion regarding the whole competitive meta problem, right? Is that okay? Cool, you have a list to counter this, i.e., with your knights. then half your knights are shut off by Dark Lancers when you verse Skitarii.
Right, because you might counter this one specific thing, but then you're going to play 5 other armies with 5
And they're
different
all
gimmicks.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the knight one's weird. I mean,
For the knights, I already surrender. I mean, I would just wait for the codex and then see how it goes.
Right.
So what is it about the knights that you, because they're your main,
Yeah,
right?
so
Like
the knights are my favorite army.
So why? What is it
Actually,
about them?
I'll add a slight bit of context to the question too, because as we mentioned earlier, I mean, yeah, you're probably one of the best players at the club. Part of which I think is potentially due to because you're playing knights and you kind of have to be a better player to keep up a bit for a lot of it.
Yep.
But you're very aware of you're aware of the meta and you are quite good at it. How do you, if you're so into playing the competition, why is it that you love knights? That they're, because they haven't exactly been at the top since maybe the Castellan was released at the, or at least since the Castellan became quite good mid 8th edition.
Yep. Yeah, I think as I've said, right, since knights is my favorite army, so of course you just need to find ways on how to counter whatever opponent that you would be having. So mostly, of course, would be your primary objectives. So I would always have like a bunch of maybe another faction to at least have some troops, have some infantry that can perform action. But at the same time, I'm not really sure if putting a pure knight list to be very competitive. Of course, there are some very good players that still can do it, but I really don't see them, in this ninth edition game to really be very good, unless, of course, when they have their new codex to be, like having some ability of like an offset, things like that. And as also, I just want to have to put into a context, like because we were talking about knights, so I really just find them very cool, right? The robots, they're so huge, and then the
They're epic
weapons,
models.
so good. So the first time I think I built a knight was in 2016, and then I just
Yep.
really fell in love with just this one model. Unfortunately, that time I was in Singapore. I don't have any friends who play 40k, so I just keep on just watching YouTube, and then I only went back to this 40k last year because of the lockdown, and then yeah, everything
Yeah.
is already history. I've got at least I think 24 nights already, and then just
That was my next question. Was how many
So
knights do you
many.
actually have?
So many. I mean, we've seen the photos, and it's like, and then didn't you just buy the
Cerastus.
Serratus
Cerastus
and the
knights.
Atropos and all that as well.
Yeah, so I have four new Cerastus knights, right? So two are lancers, one Acheron, and one Atropos. They're very
Oh,
cool. I mean,
gorgeous.
just
The
amazing.
Atropos is probably my favorite knight. Both looks
it's-
and tabletop. It's just like it's the combat knight hunter, right? Like its
Yeah, it's
whole
pretty cool.
purpose is to like stalk and destroy knights in combat. It's cool.
Yeah, it's got to be the Porphyrion for me. Just the look of it, like it's
Yes.
like a baby titan.
Yeah, just seeing them on,
I mean,
on the
all-
table.
Oh,
all
that's the
Dark
big
Dragons.
one, right? That's the big big
It's
one,
it's
right?
it's the largest class before
Yeah.
you get to a scout titan. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Before a warhound.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And the what's the one with the sword and it looks like it's got the it's like a mini Vulcan heavy bolter on the right hand.
Oh, that's the Castigator. The one with the
The
sword.
Castigator.
Yes.
Because it looks
Yeah.
like it's like hunched over like a Grim Reaper style, that lanky arms, but it's like I don't know, it looks like the kind of soldier photo you'd see in like Nam or whatever.
Yes. So,
There's kind of like distended looking dude that's like a hardcore smoker. Like that's my picture of that, and it's just like,
I'm actually
what
building.
he's doing. Kum, 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 kum.
I'm actually building another one Castigator, and then I actually purposely bought, like a third party sword because I don't like the sword. As you said, it's not so good. It's short, so I bought this one from a third party. It would really look good after.
Mm.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, that's I'm
Can't wait to
sick.
see how that comes out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's mad. I mean, they're cool. They're cool. They're a lot cooler in the. I think the lore behind them is quite interesting with the houses and stuff and
Yes.
that kind of that some books have done it really well with the kind of like aristocracy, but without the ridiculous corruption and power stuff. Like it's more the honor side of aristocracy that kind of shines through. Well, that I think that shines through in it, and I really like that. I really really like that, and that these houses have their disputes, but then they like. Especially around the heresy and stuff as well, it's really cool. But
Yeah.
even the
Yeah.
modern stuff, that's definitely a cool bit of lore that I wish GW really explored a lot more.
Mm.
um, because it's kind of like similar to the Imperial Guard style lore stuff, which I'm kind of the more and more books I read, I get drawn to that I think are just maybe they're more relatable. I
Mm.
don't know, more relatable stories, but the idea of you know, three people stuck in a night working together is kind of very similar to say like three or five guys in a tank, during
Yeah.
World War II kind of thing. That kind of imagery of that camaraderie and that mateship and that idea of being stuck in this thing that's so powerful, but you kind of still stuck in this thing with three people that you might not like or whatever, and then the whole honor and family where you've covered. It's just really cool, and maybe it's just because it's so relatable. But do you like the lore, Lawrence? Like, is that something that's drawn you to the Knights in general?
Not particularly because I don't have a lot of like readings for the knights, but my favorite household actually is House Griffith because I only knew that they are like dragon hunters or dragon killers. So that's why that's my favorite house. But other than that, I don't have enough history of the knights. I only
Mm.
love them because of the looks, and then like what I've said, once you put them uh, in the battle map, oh my god, they look really glorious.
They do,
They do.
especially on like a well filled out terrain
Hmm.
board where we've got plans to do this, which I think we Dalton and I have discussed that we will definitely be
Yeah.
including your Knights of
Oh yeah.
Tyranid Apocalypse game with
Yes.
Imperial Guard, and it'll be
Yes.
sorry, with the Imperium, and it'll be probably all your Knights with like all my Tyranids,
Yeah.
like, and then Space Marines and things, and it'll be a narrative game that we'll do on the channel with all of us in it, and it'll be
It's
epic.
Yeah, that
It'll be
will be
so
epic.
yeah.
nuts. Yeah.
yeah.
We'll have Harridans, we'll have all the big bugs and just loads of little ones, and then just like knights everywhere, and
There'll be
it'll be crazy.
big robot and monster fights and
Oh, it'll be
carpets
so
of bugs and just
it'll
everything.
be
Yes,
so
Yeah.
good.
that would be
Guardsmen's just screaming and being like topping themselves and everything.
epic. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's an interesting dichotomy. Then you've got with knights and admech in your playstyles.
Yep.
I guess is how do you find jumping between them and that sort of thing? Like, is there a big difference of experience in breaking out your knights to a game and breaking out the admech?
Okay, so initially, right, my experience with the knights, because they are very strong in terms of shooting, right, ranged weapons, really very killy. So I tend to have that kind of style. And then pre-9th edition Codex of Admech, I used to play the Castle of Gold with the Castellan robots. Those,
Oh, don't even get me started on that. Oh my god.
those immense
Half my Deathwatch army just like taken off the board turn one. I'm like, oh, great.
immense
This
number
is
of
fun.
shots, right? So that was my play style. But because I also keep learning from you guys, like Lucky always wants to, all the melee, fight, charge. So that's why I'm developing this skill. Like, okay, I shouldn't just be playing one style, but I also should be collecting, like molars that are very good in melee. So, but I still
Mm.
always love to shoot because, right, if you can shoot your opponent without just doing so much, then that's like half of your game done. But of course,
Yeah.
because of the
Yeah.
terrain and then everything can be obscured, then of course you should also be, like an aggressor in order for you to find them and then shoot them, which doesn't work, of course, for the knights because actually you can already see them. They are not blocked by obscured. I remember first turn against a Tyrannid, like you killed my
Oh yeah.
Knight Magera. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
that's very
yeah,
awful.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm not
That's
sure.
barbed hydrogel and a dimacheron together, killing a a Megara turn one, and that was pretty much game over, really. Because then we just wrapped around and did everything else, and it was like a mop up.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so my playstyle actually is just I really love just to shoot. So if I would pack all my models or my units with a lot of weapons that can just shoot, and I'm already happy.
So I guess Ultramarines will be your next army, yeah.
No, I had an Iron Hands before, right? But I quickly sold it because I'm not sure if I'm a
Well,
Space Marine player.
well, they're on the rise now again. I mean, yeah, I don't. You haven't really expressed too much love for Space Marines.
Mm.
I'm not. There's no Space Marine players in this podcast right now, so
Yeah.
no, it's not a
Xenos
lot
for
of space.
life.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, they're on the rise too, man. They've got some pretty cool
Yeah.
stuff, especially with like Bodyguard and Volkite Contemptors, making a Volkite Contemptor a character and blocking it, and that happened at. Sorry, excuse me. That happened at. Um, I think that happened at Orlando as well. Like
Yeah.
literally having a Volkite Contemptor that can be blocked. Sorry, protected by a Bodyguard. I think the Hellstorm Wargaming,
Mm.
Mikey from Hellstorm Wargaming did a video on that, and it's just like, yeah, dreadnoughts with core, and then characters, and then you might see them come back. You
Yeah.
might see Iron Hands have a resurgence, maybe
Which
as
we,
Space Marines.
which would be good. Like it's good for that to change and
Yeah.
for armies to come back into the spotlight.
Yeah, of course, definitely. I think it's good for things to change
Yeah.
with well designed rules that balance
Yeah.
with a balanced game, not weird janky stuff existing to make certain factions be relevant.
Mm. That's very true.
But
Mm.
we can only hope.
Yeah. So that might wrap it up a little bit for that topic, and we'll take a short break. I'm sure Lockie will need more beer, and we'll leave you with a quick word from our sponsor.
DiceArcade.com.au. All the biggest brands in miniatures and wargaming. Free postage over $250.
And remember, you can use the code RiskyRollers to grab an additional discount when you're shopping on the online store. So
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Tim. Right. So the next topic we're gonna sort of discuss today was competitive play. We've mentioned several times now that Lawrence is often engaging in trying to build these more competitive lists. We had a pretty good discussion about one of them as well. What draws you to play on a more competitive level? It's a question for both of you as well, because I know, Lockie, you're especially drawn to it as well.
I'll let you go first.
Oh, sure. Okay, so my background before this Warhammer 40k is a competitive card gaming. So I also join a lot of tournaments for card gaming, and then actually I think it's in my blood to just like play games and then treat it as competitively.
So, as in like Magic, or like what kind of competitive
I'm
gaming?
playing
Card gaming.
Game of Thrones.
Oh,
Game of Thrones.
I didn't even know that was a card game.
There was a card game, but it was under it was under Fantasy Flight Games, but now they stopped supporting this game because I believe, of course, the season is already over for quite some time now. And then so I used to play that in Singapore, and then of course I want to play competitive because you see you would also meet a lot of different people who have different backgrounds on their love either for the game or for this 40k, and then you are learning from them. So it's not just like your goal to win, but of course goal to gain friends and then learn how the meta evolves, learn how different armies play, things like this. So actually, right, we haven't. I'm not sure if you guys already joined a tournament here in Victoria. So supposedly we are supposed to play last week, but it was cancelled. And then
Yep.
Yeah, we had a big old spiel about this last episode.
Yeah.
Telling everyone how butthurt we were about literally 3 tournaments being canned.
so there's
Well, I mean, one of them's still going ahead. We just can't go to it.
there's one coming up this October.
Yes.
So I would be playing Forge World Metallica with that one. So that would be my
Oh yeah, that's
very first competitive
sorry. Yeah.
game, and then yeah, I'm just actually looking forward. I would of course be bringing a very good list, but I'm not also expecting much out from it.
So are you bringing more or less this list
I'm not sure.
that we've spoken
Yeah,
about previously?
maybe very identical because I'm not sure if I would be able to get 27 raiders. Maybe because currently I only have 15, so I'm not sure if I would be able to reach 27 by that time. If not, then of course I would just use my Taraxi sterilizers instead.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
going to go on an extra hunt then and make sure I get those models for you because I think you'll do really well with that list here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's see.
So we'll have to band together and
Have to try and get that all.
because we're not going to that, are we, Dalton?
happening.
That's the one that I had very strong opinions
Oh,
about
yeah,
last week.
That's right. It's the one that you don't want to have any fun at.
Yeah, it's the comp one. Yeah.
I mean, look, I like the event.
Yes, it's not my thing,
it
personally.
yeah, but it sounds like a lot of fun, and I'd love to see how you do it that one, Lawrence. With if you bring in this list or however whatever variation of it is, I'd love to see how.
Yeah. Also, guys, one thing when you join competitive games, right? There's a lot of like promotion. So they would. I'm not sure here, right? Because I haven't really joined anything yet. But when I was joining like this Game of Thrones card game, they would be giving you a lot of promo cards. So those are very nice alternative cards that you can be using. So there are so many things that you can enjoy when you're joining competitive games.
Well, that's the thing. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
one of the key aspects of you saying why you enjoyed it was, I mean, from what I got from what you were saying, was the social element, right? Like it's the social part of that is probably just as important as the actual competitive gaming in and of itself, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, gaining friends,
So-
additional friends, that's very good.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, that should always be the focus. I mean, it's always about building that community and growing that community to create a positive experience for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
then
don't get me wrong,
You can
you know,
have
like-
you can have events within that and competitive tournaments and things that are at a bit more competitive and a bit more serious level. But at the end of the day, you are still, if you're going to that and enjoying it on that level, you're enjoying the competitiveness of it, and you're not going in it to beat another person. You're just going in it to play the best
play
game
the
you
game.
can.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
really interesting point then, because that's like I enjoy a good tournament and a good bit of competition, but I'm not necessarily interested in competing for the sake of competing per se.
Mm-hmm.
But I am interested in becoming a better player, just for the sake of being good at the game and appreciating decent and good play. And that's sort of my main draw towards the competitive side of things, is going to better myself as a player and engage in that side of the game.
Yep.
So where do you fall on that whole thing, Lockie?
I like competing for the sake of competing.
Yeah.
Because I mean that's just my history of competitive sport for a very long time, and martial arts and fighting and all these kinds of things. Like the idea of competition against another person is I find that is extremely satisfying from an internal challenge point of view.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
especially with 40k being such a, it is a complicated system with a lot of variables, and probably to my own detriment, I like looking at things going, I'm going to take the weakest thing and I'm going to make it work.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to the full 100% of that. I'm not taking Gene Stealer cults to tournaments, but I'm taking Tyranids to tournaments, and I'm not doing that Trip Dimachron thing. I'm not doing that, 120 Gaunt kind of thing. Like trying to find probably never going to happen, right? But I find that enjoyment, and that's where I get the enjoyment out of becoming a better player by testing myself through adversity, sort of thing. And that's what I like about the idea of a competitive game and a competitive scene.
I definitely I'll come down hard with you on that point. I mean, I'm going to try and bring 2 reanimators to a tournament in November. So
yeah, I mean, but that's you hear about it all the time, and you hear about it if you hear the pro guys like the Art of War guys, and they might talk about it, and a lot of other high-ranking competitive players like Mikey, like as we said earlier, from Hellstorm Gaming, and those kinds of people that have been in the competitive scene for a really long time, that say sometimes this player that they know of or them themselves just bring out this crazy weird list. Everyone's like, whatever, like that's not gonna do, and it wins, right? Or it wins a GT, or it places second, or it does something. And then the fact that happens automatically makes people think, why? Or what am I doing? And it's kind of that, and from what I've seen, heard, and spoken to with people, that's very commonly happens here in Australia. That's more or less our meta, right? Is that people actually actively, go out of their way to go, I'm going to take something so not what everyone else is doing in the rest of the world, and be like, I'm going to make it work. And I like that. I think that it speaks volumes to our kind of underdog Australian nature, maybe. Like maybe there's some deep-seated
we
kind
like
of connection
the underdog,
there.
and we root for the underdog.
And it's just cool. Like, you ever hear of some list that just is just weird and just not expected, and you're like, that did well. Like, not even wins, like just did well. You're like
how how do they manage that?
Yeah,
and that's really
just
cool.
It's like similar to someone taking a super fluffy list to a tournament. You're like, man, good on you, bro. Because you assume, and you do assume, that they're going into it with no misconceptions about what the most likely outcome is going to be, right? Your assumption is that they understand that they're probably going to lose. They're probably going to go 0-5 or 1-4 or whatever. But they're still like having a mad time because it's like, this is just dumb and it's fun. And then if it works, it's like, cool. I like that. I think that whole concept for me is great. Until we're at a point where 40k competitively is a real, I don't want to say real competitive sport, but like a properly funded / whatever. However you want to justify the word, the letters that all come together to create words for that. I feel that's the kind of way I'll enjoy it. And then the moment it starts getting closer towards that, then I'll be like, okay, now let's kind of look at it a little bit differently.
Let's really get serious about it and really engage with that aspect of a competitive event. Exactly.
I mean, like, look, I've always been super competitive in everything. I see painting as competitive. When I see someone paint something really awesome, I'm like, I want to do that better. Or I want to do it, like, maybe not better, but I want to do that as just as well or whatever. So I see everything
really well, bro.
Oh,
I reckon when you bring your army to those events, you would win the best painted army.
I think you're definitely in with a shot, for sure.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. That's awesome. So, and that, but that's just how I am, and I think those things are really good for the game. I think it's really good for the game, because especially down here, because you see things get a change where it's not just the same Space Marine army or the same AdMech army or the same whatever army, like, and this is me speaking to the maybe Australian meta a bit now, or just the variety of army. Australia is known to be a more chaos orientated grouping.
Which is weird, considering we don't have, I think, any chaos players in this little group here, or many at all in our club.
We got 2. Death Guard. Myself and Mike.
Oh, Death Guard,
okay, all right. Yeah.
But in terms of normal CSM, no CSM. We are like 90% Xenos.
Yeah.
Seriously, it's weird.
I think Lawrence is our most Imperial heavy player.
Yes. Yeah. I'm loyal to the Emperor.
And then we've started to get a ridiculous influx of custodians, which is just.
Oh yeah, there's 3 or 4
I think
different
there's
custodies players.
4 out of the new people that have joined. There's like 4 custodian players. You're like, oh guys, go away. So whatever. I mean,
not really, but there's some fantastic custodies paint schemes coming up in the Discord at the moment.
yeah,
Yeah.
Custodians are great. They really are. They're really cool.
I think you and I are 2 of those players, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm hoping for T6 in their decks. Anyway, let's not
Should be
digress.
another day, bro.
That's another hour and a half podcast just on that topic alone.
Well, actually, all right. Speaking of our local club and what we've got, because we've got a few Xenos books and that sort of thing there. And we've got what I think I'm the only Skitarii player at the moment, and haven't played a game with them yet in the club. And I think we've got one other.
Are you a Skitarii player then? Really?
Well, I've painted most of the army so far.
Yeah.
I've got those 3 raiders, Ravagers, sitting on my desk that have been almost finished for the past 3 weeks. But so I've got them, and I've got Necrons, and we've got another Necron player. But there aren't too many 9th edition and sort of top tier armies being thrown around, other than say the Death Guard ones.
Yes.
So how does that come around to you, Lawrence, when you rock up with your AdMech and do you tend to think about that at all when you're building lists to come to club days and for the more casual events?
No, actually, when I play with our club,
Just like no, straight up no.
I
don't care.
Raiders and
No. You see, I would always play knights, right? So, here and there, I would add some AdMech, like just the troops, but not entirely my main detachment. My main detachment would always be knights.
I like your AdMech Knight soup lists. They're fun lists to play against.
Yeah, because I'm very straightforward to like my opponent, right? So I would always tell them, you see, knights, they are very tough to kill, but at the same time, I can't play straight objectives. So you really have a chance. So, but if I can shoot you clearly, then I'm sorry, you would also quickly die. So when casual games, whenever I would be playing casual games, I'm not really thinking of those like very very meta list, because of course, unless you are really playing like to practice for like a tournament or something, or your opponent would also be playing a very good list, then that's the only time you would be playing that kind of list. But just for casual games, then should always just be friendly or casual list.
Unless you're playing Lucky's Death Watch and you want to bring all your mortal wound robots, right? Yeah, sweet. No, I'm kidding.
Now, when I'm playing our Tyranids, then we can talk properly.
Yeah. No, I think it's a difficult one to be in. I mean, we kind of touched on this previously in our previous episode, and more in terms of Forge World and the relative nature of paying to win kind of and armies that are
just with Forge World as well, and that idea of paying to win. I'll throw it out there. I'm not convinced that Forge World, at least in Australia, Forge World units are necessarily the best or the most efficient in any given list. The main thing in Australia was they were just so hard to get. For many years, they've just they've always seemed like the holy grail of hobby,
and expensive.
Well, that's the thing. They're
they're like
hard
double
to get
the
here,
price, right?
Yeah, you can do the price conversion from pounds to dollars and then double it. And that's what we're paying. Plus shipping and all that kind of stuff. But and for that reason, I think we've got this idea that whenever someone does devote that amount of hobby budget and time and effort into bringing a Forge World unit, and it comes and we see it on the table and it destroys half our army or whatever it does, we sort of go, oh, Forge World's the greatest rules and stuff. I think a lot of that potentially just comes from the people that are willing to put that much effort and stuff in are probably some of the better gamers around, who devote more time and energy into being good at the game as well as the hobby and what they're putting into it. Not always, but I think that's definitely contributed to that idea of Forge World being better than.
I mean, here for sure.
Yeah,
I mean,
this is probably more specifically an Australian.
I mean, it's even to that point though. Like, there's no because of the difference of the meta here. And again, this is also a little bit of just what I've been hearing. I've only been back in the hobby now for 2 years after a big hiatus, as you all know. But my ear holes are constantly plugged with everything and anything 40k. Because of what we're doing and just being in lockdown, not being able to actually go out and do these things. That
you have to clean nurglings out of your ears every time we want to play a game against you.
That's it. But
it's a whole process, man.
Yeah, but because of Rona, we have to find a way to kind of be relevant and understand what's happening and kind of do your history and learn whatever.
Yeah. Because
we can't physically experience it, right? So, from my understanding, is that when those things are, the Mageras, even if you were to say like super heavies or even like the Diamond Heralds and stuff like that, based on how everyone else plays here, like it still doesn't. It's no guarantee that it's going to work, right? Like, and that's the thing I think is really interesting about being in this part of the world and experiencing it from a new / old returning player looking to really branch into that and kind of dive head first, inside out first, whatever, into it, kind of go, let's get it all in and around us.
Yeah.
Because there's so much to learn and unpack, and then because the majority of the content we get, as you said, Lawrence, at the start of this, you were comparing, your basis of your list is off Richard Siegel's list, who's a North American player. There's no guarantee that list is actually going to work.
That's very true.
Well, you might rock up to that event and come up against some janky, demon list that just rinses you.
Yeah,
exactly.
That if they took that to an American event, they'd get wiped and laughed out of the tournament. Like it's.
And demons are massive here, especially with I mean, prior to GW's FAQ, where they just completely ruined the list. But the army, but with the Bellicor thing.
Yep.
But I've heard some crazy, like the normal blokes. I think it's Liam. I hope I don't get that wrong, but one of them is a really prolific demon player.
Yep.
And he just goes through that thing and talks about how weird and janky, and the fact that you could have a unit of 10 horrors that end up becoming 30, and it's just like, what? Like, what? How does that work? And it's just cool, and that, out of all the reviews of that book that I heard from American and English people, never heard someone so excited about the book. And that in of itself is really cool, because there's a whole diverse, different spread of opinions, just purely based on where we are geographically, and that's exciting for me, because I'm like, cool. It means all the crazy weird stuff that I want to do. Like, I want to do a flying only Tyranids list, which is like I have Crones, Gargoyles, Sky Slashers, and a Harridan, and just be like, whatever, I don't care. We're all flying. Have fun.
Well, I mean, like it's really cool in that sense as well, because as you're saying, we get all this content and these podcasts and stuff from the US and from the UK, and we can take all that information and all of that input and then go, well, that's great, but we have our own challenges here as well, that we take all of that and we have to then adapt that to what we have around us, which is really cool. A cool extra challenge we've got down here as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, it doesn't need to be. I mean, look, for people, if anyone who's listening who's not from Australia, every country in the world at the moment has got their problems, but we barely can leave our houses. It's tough. It's tough. Everyone is.
I mean,
everyone's going through their own struggles, globally and that. But when you see parts of the world are opening up and we're literally still stuck in it, it's very frustrating. FOMO is real right now.
Yeah.
It's very, very real. And I just can't wait to get out there and explore it all together. And
yes,
I mean, Lawrence, you and I'm going to need to throw down some Skitarii against this AdMech list you're running.
Yeah, but
to get these Ravagers painted up and sink some of those Dark Lancers into We haven't got any vehicles in that list.
Into what? Into
Yeah,
a single,
yeah.
into a Skitarii.
But
I mean, I'm going to bullseye some Skitarii with these.
yeah, but truth to be told, I still believe that Drukhari is still the best army as of today.
I think that's pretty
yeah.
contentious. I think with the way that Book of Fire is treating the Admech and just the way the whole meta's shifted subtly, I think you've probably
Statistically, from tournament info, they're still better.
Yeah, Drukhari is still the best.
They're winning. They're winning more. They're still more prevalent.
Yeah.
Look, and I also do think that's a little bit because Admech kicked up a much bigger dust pile than what Drukhari did. So everyone else just teched in to kill them because they knew it was going to be prevalent.
Yeah.
And then, Poison, for example, it would probably wipe this army.
Yeah.
Right? Teching heavy into Poison would probably be pretty epic
true.
because he's running no vehicles, yeah?
Yeah.
I think both armies, and this is the hot topic, right?
Yeah.
I know we're getting on, but both armies, no matter what, you just take the most basic list or whatever list that you have, Dalton, for your Drukhari, and this list can literally deal with everything.
I think so.
Well, actually,
there is more or less nothing you can't deal with.
I mean, you say that. I'll go briefly on a bit of a tangent here, which is that I think, like, the rest of the game excluded, the Admech and the Drukhari books are actually reasonably well balanced against one another. Reasonably.
Against one another?
Yes.
To be honest, I haven't read the Drukhari book, so I don't know. But, yeah.
Fair play. But in this case, like, I'm thinking about your list, Lawrence, and I'm going, right, yeah, I can see tools in my toolbox in the Drukhari book that
counters it.
I could tech heavily into and counter your list hard. But I'm also then, at that point, I'm actually building a pretty weak, relatively, Drukhari list against a lot of other things. I'm actually
it was kind of the same argument as before, right?
Well, that's the thing. I'm actually opening up a lot of weaknesses in my own army to do that. And I'm thinking about, like, I've got a couple of, not like super competitive or super, like, optimized lists, but I've got a couple of lists I'm playing around with just to play as more of a mid-tier Drukhari, which is still very good, obviously. It's Drukhari. But like a mid-tier list. And I'm thinking with both of those, I think both of those would struggle. One of them would do slightly better, but both of those would struggle against your list because you've outmaneuvered me at that point. You've got too much in too many different places, which is the one thing that the Drukhari are designed to do is the one thing that they're potentially...
I guess Eldari in general, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at the moment, the other books are sort of struggling with it, just given that they're a bit older. But that's what they do, is they maneuver and they're across the board. And a lot of the strategy revolves around that maneuverability and running those raiders in every quarter. And you're kind of going to pit me to the post with that one.
Yeah.
And then as far as killiness, well, because of the way that the power that the Drukhari have, hoarding up the infantry does cause problems for us. And even before the Admech book came out, Admech were one of our hardest matchups because you'd see those Skitarii heavy lists that we'd struggle to put down.
So I think in this situation, right, this specific example,
yes, yeah,
it's not necessarily who plays the primary better; it's who trades up better.
Yes.
And
by trading
list,
up, just to people who aren't necessarily competitively driven, trading up is, I kill you, you kill me, but is your unit more valuable or more points heavy than my unit?
Correct.
Right, and I think in this specific list matchup, the things I'm thinking are that this specific matchup, I'd be running a few like boats and things like that, and they're not efficient against this list. So whenever Lawrence manages to down one of those, he's trading up almost no matter what it is.
But I mean, okay, yeah, but what's he taking it out with? How's he taking out a boat?
He's taking it out with all the Skitarii firepower. They can throw out their anti-vehicle versions of their... Is it the galvanic rifles that do it?
Yeah, but he's only running... He's min-maxing that, right? So he's only running MSU.
Yeah. So he's not dealing with the boats as efficiently as he could be, but I think he's dealing with my boats more efficiently than my boats dealing with his infantry.
Oh yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
And,
Yeah.
and I think that's where I'm going with this.
That,
Yeah.
That's true.
And then because I've put so much into boats, my infantry, sure, I think my infantry may be, I'll say, equally as efficient at dealing with his infantry as his are with mine. More in the case of the witches and their combat.
Yeah, I was going to say you smash that every day of the week, and your incubi.
Yeah, but I'm not maxing out the number of incubi I can have though either.
That's true.
And again, like it's sort of, were I to build a really competitive list, I think it'd go a lot differently. But
it's very interesting because it's a good test, right?
It's
a good test to go. Let's run a massively just out of a interest of an experiment.
Yeah,
Let's take a really heavy infantry AdMech list with all its jank and all its utility and all its crazy objectiveness, and let's do the same thing with the AdMech. Okay, both lists may not be optimized in certain ways, and let's just see how they play
that is a really
how do they
interesting
trade up against one another from 1-to-1 in infantry wise.
We can do that.
I mean, just carpet the board with what witches and Cabalites, essentially.
I think that's a cool test.
That's
man.
a really interesting idea. I mean, I'm not convinced either list. Well, it's not a good list per se for the Skitarii, but it's an interesting one.
And literally, as we've been talking about it, as I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking to myself, going, I reckon you're spot on with the balance between them. The books themselves. Okay, this is Skitarii being able to play with Colder Strife, and this is also AdMech playing
with their two books.
Veteran cohort, right? So this is at their max.
Yeah.
Also non-refined list, but we're talking pound for pound here now, right? Like we're literally talking. We're doing a pound for pound comparison, point to point, whatever, however you want to. I mean, point to point is a bad word. Pound for pound is a better metric, I guess, to compare or whatever analogy, whatever words. I want to see it. I kind of really, I reckon we should play that game and do it on the channel.
Yeah, I reckon we should.
I reckon
if that's something you guys would be interested in seeing, make sure to let us know in the comments or hit us up on the Discord, because
for sure.
Truth to be told, guys,
I'm coming around to painting another 20 Cabalites for that.
I have 120 Skitarii. 60 vanguards and 60 rangers.
Oh my god. Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that I will be able to functionally and productively and efficiently run like 110 gaunts, 120 nids, or 8 carnifexes and 2 big bugs and smash. So maybe there'll be a time where I can
interesting SKU lists and stuff that we can play around with.
Yeah. I think I would very happily I would be very happy to sit out on that and watch you guys play that on the channel. I think that would be really cool.
I think that would be a 4-hour game.
No, I actually think it'll be like a turn 1 or a turn 2 game, and that'll be it. I reckon.
I think we'd very quickly figure out what's going on.
Yep, 100%. I think you'll know by midway through turn 2 exactly where that's going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I think we'll look to wrap up. Thank you so much, Lawrence, for coming on and being our guest here in episode 4 of the Risky Rollers podcast.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys.
It's been great, man. You've given us some good insights.
Yeah.
Keen to and we'll definitely have you on the channel too. So it's
absolutely.
Yeah, it's gonna be
awesome.
Good.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being on. Thank you again, Lockie, and of course, thanks to all you for listening. Make sure to tune back in next week for episode 5. And make sure to be subscribed and following and all of that.
Should we tease what episode 5 is?
Well, if you insist.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to take this one away?
No. You can.
Oh, all right. Well, all right then. Well, for episode...
That's also because I'm not actually 100% sure what is episode 5.
Quick, come up with something quickly.
No, it's here, but I don't have it open, so...
I mean, the doc you're referring to is empty.
Right, okay.
So it's episode 5, as Lockie is referring to, is It's gonna be our first guest from outside our little club group, and it's going to be the big man himself, Tim from Dice Arcade.
Yeah.
We're going to be chatting with him about his store up in Sydney and his commission painting.
It's even more a hobby orientated one.
It will be actually less of a gaming, more of a hobby. Both the community and I guess community and a little bit on what it's like to be running a hobby store and that sort of thing, and then also on painting, and less about commissions and more just about the painting and the hobby side of things. We'll have another episode on commissions later on.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, that's
for this one,
exciting.
especially. Yeah, it's gonna be cool.
Sure.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.